Good afternoon and welcome, sisters and brothers of the Machinists Union and our allies in the labor movement. This is your weekly 141 report, and I'm your host, Dave Lehive, a communications representative for District Lodge 141. This week, our report takes us to Northern Virginia's Labor Federation, AFL-CIO, as we have a conversation with the president, Virginia Diamond. Our topic will focus on the PRO Act and the vital importance of getting this labor legislation passed. All of this and more as our 141 report starts now. Welcome, Sister Virginia, to the 141 report. How are you today?
Great, Dave. Thank you so much for having me. I love the 141 report, so it's an honor to be able to join you today.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. So, Sister, as this is being your first time on the 141 report, can you please give our viewers your background on where you started working, how you became union, and the union positions you have held and currently hold?
Absolutely. So I started out with the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. Actually, that's a union that's been merged into other unions now, ultimately into Workers United. But I was an organizer with the ILGWU in Southwest Virginia and North Carolina, going to garment shops and working with the workers there to give them, an opportunity to have dignity and a voice on the job. And that was a wonderful background for that. I went to law school and I became a labor lawyer, and I worked with the Virginia AFL-CIO initially, and then continued my organizing work as assistant organizing director for the national AFL-CIO. For 6 years, I was the chair of the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission. So I was actually a judge, the labor representative on the Workers' Comp Commission. And following that, I have been helping out mostly, immigrant construction workers with wage and hour, wage theft, wage and hour claims. And 6 years ago, I was elected president of the Northern Virginia Labor Federation, AFL-CIO. Nova Labor, as we call it, has 65 different labor organizations that are affiliated. We cover the whole top half of the state down to below Fredericksburg and out to West Virginia. And we have, about 70,000 members in our organization. We have great solidarity between all the unions, not only the machinists, which are an important affiliate, but also everyone from the pilots and flight attendants and custodial workers and teachers and firefighters and writers and actors and everybody else that works for a living in Northern Virginia, struggling in a state that is prominently anti-union, and we have about 4% union density at this time. We've recently had some victories. We got the right to for local employees to engage in collective bargaining for the first time in about 40 years. So we have some progress that's been made, but we have a long way to go, and we still have a right to work law, which we would very much like to get repealed.
I've been following what's been going on in the state of Virginia. I, as a resident of Pennsylvania for quite some time, and now currently just recently became a resident of Virginia. I'm now paying even more closer attention to what is going on here in the state. As a union person, it's my responsibility, and just as much as every other union person's responsibility, to pay attention to what's going on with labor laws. And the Northern Virginia AFL-CIO has been doing a great job keeping me informed. And I know other of our machinist brothers and sisters that work at DC and at Dulles Airport get a wealth of information. Sister, I had the first time honor of meeting you was back in 2017 at a Northern Virginia Union Women's meeting. I was there with my wife, and over the years, I've gotten to see your work and with the labor unions. I especially like the airport labor Zoom calls you host. I think it's like almost every week you have it, and the reports from other labor unions. How did all that come about?
When our labor federation started to do a new strategic plan a few years ago, what we really wanted to do was focus on union growth and union organizing and in bringing the unions together with strategic organizing outreach. So one of the most important sectors of our union movement in Northern Virginia is the airports. We have two airports, National Airport and Dulles Airport, and we have more than 20 different unions that are represented at those airports. And interestingly, and in contrast to the rest of the state, where we have 4% union density, we probably have 70% union density at the airports. So it's a remarkable source of union power and solidarity. And so we really wanted to build upon that. And we started holding these meetings. Before the pandemic, we held them in public, and we had a lot of people coming together, and we would often invite in prominent political figures. We had Senator Warner, we had Senator Kane, we've had Congressman Beyer to come and bring people together, and so that they can hear what our concerns are. And so together as a caucus, we have tried to address common issues with the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, having to do with wage scales for their service workers, as well as healthcare, paid sick leaves, but access to the workforce and addressing anti-union employers there. So together we have a unified voice with EMWA, and we also support each other. I know on March 30th, for example, we're going to have a big rally. All the unions are going to participate at EMWA and talk about just airport worker rights and living standards, labor standards for airport workers. So yeah, we appreciate your participation, the participation of the machinists and the many other unions that are at the airports. We feel like it's really important. We also do political work together. We have handed out leaflets, but obviously under the pandemic, everything has changed. And as you say, we are just doing Zoom calls, but hopefully down the road, we'll be able to get together again. And we really want all of the stewards at the airports to get to know each other and know who each other are and work together and build those relationships and really strengthen our presence and our visibility at the airports.
It's really amazing, Jenny. What I found was, like you said, the airports are high density, labor unions. It's just amazing to see how many labor unions actually are at the airport. And they may not just be airline personnel. They could be the construction workers that are there, the electrical workers, the plumbers, it's been a vast amount of different labor unions that actually are drawn in there. And I like your strategy that by building from the strongholds that we have at the airports, and you could build out and build that outreach out of the airports. I think that is a really unique way to reach members that aren't in unions, right? And try to get them and show them the benefits, So You're doing some fantastic work there. I really, really do like it a lot. So the main reason why I had you on this week was to talk about the PRO Act. Okay. Can you tell our viewers what the PRO Act is?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for highlighting that. Just recently in his State of the Union address, President Biden said, let's pass the PRO Act. Let's give workers the right to join unions and not let employers stop them. And I think this is and has been characterized as the top priority for labor. What it addresses is private sector workers. So it's not about the public sector. It's about workers who work for private corporations. And it's about the fact that the National Labor Relations Act, which was passed in the 1930s, needs to be updated, it needs to be improved, and it needs to be made effective. Right now, it is a pretty toothless law. a good example of the problems with the National Labor Relations Act. I mean, you can see it right now with the Starbucks campaign that's going on, and what that company has been able to do, which is, threaten people, fire people, close stores, take away benefits, all of these dramatic, one-on-one meetings, captive audience meetings, stalling elections. They take 6 months to have an election. So you can just see in microcosm right there in that one campaign that workers in the United States don't truly have the right to freely join a union. They have to go through a minefield. I mean, they have to basically be courageous superheroes to hold it together to win. And because of that problem, we had a union density, as you know, back in the 70s of 34%, early 70s, 34% of the private sector workforce was unionized. Now it's 6% of the private sector workforce. It's continuing to decline. The reason for that is not because workers don't want to join unions. All of the surveys show that they would like to have unions if they could. The reason why why unionization rates are so low is because of this gauntlet that people have to run, the amount of power that an employer has to interfere with and disrupt union elections. They're not fair elections. They're not anything like a democratic election. So that's the context for the PRO Act, why we need to pass it, to fix that National Labor Relations Act so that workers have the freedom to join. And then if they do, we'll reverse that. We'll get back to our 30% density. And what that would mean is we would have a middle class again, because right now income disparity is such that we've returned to the Gilded Age levels of inequality. You have the rich and you have the poor. And it's because the government has not acted to allow and protect the workers' right to have a union. Without that, we're going the direction of really right-wing autocracy, divisiveness, polarization, and some even say fascism, because an actual democracy cannot exist in a situation where there is no economic shared prosperity. And that's what's happening. You don't have democracy because everyone's going like, we need something new. This isn't working. This isn't working for my family. I'm working 3 jobs. I don't have a pension. I don't have affordable health care. I can't pay my student debts. I can't, people are squeezed and they're struggling. And meanwhile, the rich are getting richer. And that's because of this.
We see that today.
Yep.
We definitely see that today. So, Jenny, I understand that this legislation has already passed in the House, but it's dragging in the Senate because, let's face it, we need 60 votes to pass this bill, correct?
That's one issue, but we're focused on another issue, which is that the Democrats in the Senate are not all supporting the PRO Act.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Okay, so I mean, one excuse they might say is, well, you need 60 anyway. You don't need me. You don't got it. But that's not an excuse. We need to get all the Democrats, and then we can figure out how to do this. We can figure out some reconciliation thing, but find some Republicans to support it. But there's no reason for any Republicans to come on a bill that the Democrats are not supporting.
Right. So we're trying to gather support in the Senate. But like you said, we still have some senators, Democratic senators, that will not support this pro-labor bill. So who are these people?
Okay, there's 3 of them. So there's the 2 senators from Arizona, Senator Kelly and Senator just blanking out on her name.
Sinema.
Yeah, Sinema. So Sinema and Kelly are not with us. And then the reason why we are so focused and feel so much responsibility for this is that our own senator in Virginia, Senator Mark Warner, is not supporting the PRO Act. Yeah. So we're very upset about that. We feel that we have supported him. We have helped elect him over the years. We have had previously very good relationship with him, a personal, friendly relationship. And so we do not understand why he has drawn a line in the sand around the right to have a union. It's very distressing because honestly, he's very active in supporting democracy and democracy movements abroad. And we don't understand why he would not recognize that the absence of a strong private sector union movement in this country is a grave threat to our democracy here in the United States. So we are concerned and we are upset that he's not representing what we believe the working class constituency in Virginia. And we're also chagrined that, what's wrong with our senator? Everyone else has, and all of our House of Representatives not only signed it, but they voted for it.
Yeah.
All of our Virginia Democrats
Yeah,
and
we
all
voted
of the
for it.
TMV Democrats. So he's really just basically taken a stand on this as a very, very important issue. And what's confusing is, maybe, there's a lot of bills where, you might not agree with every single little piece of it, or you might have questions about this or that. But if it's very important to your party, if it's important to your president, if it's important to your constituents, you go ahead and sign on anyway.
Yeah.
It's not like the most important thing to you to take a stand and say, I'm against this. But yet he has chosen this one bill that the president supports, that his party supports, and that the working class in his state supports. And he's saying, this is a bridge too far. I'm not getting on board with this. I'm not for it. And it's basically saying to all of the workers in the private sector, you're just going to have to do without unions and just count on us to pass nice legislation, and we'll fix a tax code, and we'll raise your minimum wage, and we'll do this or that. But you won't have power. You won't have a union. You won't have power.
Yeah. So what are union workers doing to pressure Senator Warren? I know you've been doing something kind of creative. So why don't you fill our viewers in?
Yeah. So in Virginia, what we don't want to happen is for this to fade away and people to give up and say, well, we tried, let's talk about something else. Let's pick another bill. Let's move on to the next topic. What we've said is that if labor does not prioritize and persist in fighting for the right to have a union, nobody else is going to do it for us. So we're not letting it go. We're not changing the subject. We're not moving on. We have had weekly demonstrations urging Warner to sign on to the PRO Act. We just passed the 1-year mark. We had our last Wednesday, we call them Wednesdays with Warner. Last Wednesday was our 52nd week. We go out, rain or shine, snow, sleet, ice, doesn't matter. We are out there in a public park in Alexandria, Virginia. We always get a great turnout, and we have built it around the notion of breakfast pastries. We have presented cakes to the senator with messages on them, such as sign the PRO Act. We put graphs on the cake showing the decline of unionization and the rise in inequality. We had a cake that said, do what Manchin did when Manchin signed on. So we give messages on the cakes. We also enjoy eating the cakes ourselves. We have breakfast, we gather, but we are not going to stop. We are not going away. And we're just going to keep this alive until, and we've also done other things in Virginia. The Democratic Party of Virginia passed a resolution urging him to sign on to the PRO Act. So this has the support of the Democratic committees, the rank and file Democrats, the leadership of the Democratic Party. Senator Kaine has signed on. So it is really remarkable with that degree of pressure that Senator Warner feels like that he can be a Democrat and yet be against working class people having the right to have a union.
Yeah. I mean, by standing together with his fellow Democrats, it would just strengthen the whole positioning on passing this important legislation. I mean, you mentioned it yourself, that Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who hasn't really been too helpful for us, for workers in this country and for voters, he actually signed on board with this legislation because of the mine workers pressured him. So Mark Warner really needs to get on board with this. So Ginny, let me ask you, what can union workers do to help pass the PRO Act?
I think that's a great question. I think we need to keep pushing for this. They should reach out to their own senators, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and if they've signed on or not, and tell them that we have not forgotten, we have not given up, we are not changing the subject or moving away. The right to have a union is a fundamental human right. It's a fundamental democratic right. And we can't have a democracy or a middle class without it. So just keep that alive. Keep reaching out to the senators. Keep organizing. Keep holding rallies. And just don't let this subject be changed to other issues, because nothing that we can get through transfer payments, tax reform, anything can substitute for the democratic right of workers to have a voice. It's been said that democracy is a three-legged stool. It's one part of it is electoral politics. It's voting. It's going one day a year and voting. And that is elections and fair elections and access to the elections is one part of democracy. A second part, a fundamental piece of democracy is freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. Those freedoms are also, you can't have a democracy without them. The third part is institutions in civil society where people have the right to come together and advocate for themselves. And that primarily consists of unions. And so without unions, just expecting our electoral process to just deliver for the working class, it won't, and it hasn't. So there's nothing, I don't think, more important to working class people than to get the right to organize in the private sector. We've seen what happens. We've returned to the Gilded Age. So anything that, all I'm saying to people is, don't give up. Don't accept the fact that, well, we need 60 votes. What are you going to do? And then what I don't like, is me personally, is this hyper focus on electoral politics. Okay, so maybe if we elect more Democrats, maybe if we get more, and then we're going to lose the House anyway. The Democrats are going to lose the House. The point is, we can't put all of our effort, all of our attention, all of our hopes on continuously engaging in electoral politics and electing more Democrats. Because we have an example right here with Mark Warner, where we elected a Democrat and we're not getting his support. And I will say that in the Virginia General Assembly, when we had, up until this year, we had Democratic Senate, Democratic House of Delegates, and a Democratic governor, they refused to repeal the right to work law. So we did everything that we were supposed to do to elect Democrats. And instead of coming in there and saying, okay, now we're going to empower workers. We're going to support the working class. We're going to take away this vile, racist, anti-union law that's a legacy of Jim Crow. And they wouldn't do it because they didn't want to offend, the Chamber of Commerce and some of the big corporations in the state. And instead, what they said was, well, we'll do stuff for labor. We will raise your minimum wage. Now it's $11 an hour. You can't live on that. And you can't live on $15 an hour where I live.
Yeah.
So raising the minimum wage is not enough. It doesn't empower workers. And then they talk about, well, we're going to pass a week of sick pay. Yeah. But if you have a union, you can negotiate good wages, and you can negotiate sick pay. You can negotiate all of that.
I would point out that just recently, the Republicans tried to stop the increases to the minimum wage in Virginia. It was stopped by the Democrats in the state, if I recall. And so that being said, is they were so afraid, the Democrats were afraid to offend the Chamber of Commerce. Republicans are going to go after it, the working class. From what I've been seeing, primarily, I mean, we do have some friends, believe it or not, that are Republicans that do support labor, but overall, they are supporting a position of big business, and the Democrats were supposed to be supporting us. They should have passed that right to work, removing right to work in the state, and quite frankly, look what happened this last election.
Exactly. And I do think that if the Democratic Party, I think that both parties support a big business. I think that's what's going on. When you're talking about exactly what you're referring to, there was a battle in the legislature. The Republicans wanted the minimum wage to be $11 an hour, and the Democrats were fighting to make it $12 an hour. And I can tell you this, neither of those is a living wage. What we need political people who are going to fight for our right to have unions. And that means get rid of the right to work law and support the working class and risk offending big, fat, capitalist, oligarchs. You're just going to have to decide which side are you on. But right now in Virginia, we're facing up against a situation where neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are really fighting for workers. And I think that I'll just throw one thing in here, which may be a little controversial, but I think one of the reasons why the Republicans are so anti-union is because the union movement has embedded itself so thoroughly in the Democratic Party that they don't see any wiggle room where unions are really going to support them. And so they figure, well, we'll crush the union movement since they're just Democrats anyway. And I do think that it's important for unions to be independent of both parties.
Yeah, well, we always say in the Machinist Union, we have our own PAC. It's called the Machinist Nonpartisan League, and we support politicians who support labor. If you're a Republican, you go out there and I'm supporting the PRO Act, and you're running for election, and you say you're going to support it, we're going to support you in your election. But if you're not, don't expect support from us. We're supporting labor issues, and if the Democrats say that they're going to do something and they don't do it, and your election comes up and you haven't supported us, don't expect support from us. and
Yep.
I think that's a
Yep.
lot of our members get away from here. Listen, we're running out of time here, but I do have one final question before well, actually two final questions. One final question though, this is Women's History Month. And you, sister, you have a lot of sisters in this country have done some great work in labor history. Who would be somebody that you would look up to, admire, and give you the ambition to continue to fight what you're doing for labor?
One who's in the past, Mother Jones, who was out fighting well into her elderly years. I think she lived to 100, fighting for workers, leading strikes, and very militant, as many others.
Okay. All right. Before I close, would be anything you might want to add to finish out this report?
I just want to congratulate the Machinists Union and you, Dave, for the great communications work that you're doing with this program, and also thank them for all their activism and support in Northern Virginia. The Machinists Union is awesome, great solidarity and great leadership and great women leaders as well. So it's an honor to work with you all, and I appreciate your coming on, or inviting me on.
Well, this wraps up this week. I want to thank you, Sister Virginia, for your information you shared with the viewers. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye, Dave.
This concludes the 141 report for this week. Everyone have a safe and healthy weekend. See you next week. Bye for now.